Welcome, and thanks to all of you for joining the Rhubarb Collective's inaugural live Zoom chat. The Rhubarb Collective is Chris Hughes of BC Hughes Destination Development and Marketing, based in Shallow Lake, Ontario, Amanda Jopling of GSM Project, based in Montreal, Jill Vandal of the Tourism Company, based in Toronto, Shannon Guillen of the Travel Corporation, based in Toronto, and Fran Ho-Hall of CBRE Tourism and Leisure Group, based in Burlington, North in Toronto, and then myself, Rebecca Godfrey, co-manager of CBRE Tourism and Leisure Group, also based in Toronto. So we have come together to facilitate discussions to help find answers to Canadian tourism industry questions, and really just to create a space for you to come and chat with your peers and colleagues. Our hope is to use our experience and our expertise to contribute to you, the DMOs, the operators, government, but also to learn from you, because communication is really important in times like these. So this is a forum for frank and open discussion, and this is really a time of crisis. And what we've learned from history is that change and innovation can come out of a time of crisis. So we really want to help you plan, imagine, innovate, reimagine, but we also want to talk about survival and immediate plans that you have to come up with during this current time of maximum uncertainty. Before we get started, just a few quick ground rules. For the next 6 weeks or so, we're going to be hosting these 30-minute chats and rotating group leaders. So we'll each get a bit of an intro and get our discussion started. And then as we're starting the chat, we'll have you muted, but please feel free to use the chat window. And as we start to ask questions and so on, please feel free to unmute yourselves, and we really want you to participate. So from then on, the discussion is open. I'll give a 5-minute warning just before the 2:30 mark. And if we don't get to your question, please feel free to send us an email through the website, or if you have our emails individually, please send us an email. We'll also be recording these meetings, and we'll post those on our website weekly. Okay, so today's topic is a new start to tourism, particularly in light of the loosening of restrictions on some of the social distancing policies and so on. So I'm going to ramble a bit about the upcoming May 2-4 weekend. So as a tourism operator here in Canada, now's about the time where you will be ramping up. Things are really starting to ramp up. I mean, even for year-round businesses, most of us are highly seasonal. This year, however, you may be wondering what the benefits are to looking at new sources of demand and generating revenue, and balancing your base operating expenses, paying those operating expenses. And really, what are those base operating expenses, particularly as a seasonal operator? What are those costs that you would have to keep going versus bringing in new demand to generate revenue? Is it worth opening up? And then there's obviously debt payments over and above those. Obviously there are new cleaning protocols, things like that in place. What we're hearing from the hotel industry, from some of those those properties that remain open, is at least for the smaller ones, they've been able to balance some of the cleaning costs with providing less services in terms of, say, not offering a full breakfast, just having yogurt cups and stuff like that. So less cost on that. But that's more the year-round properties. In terms of attracting that small slice of demand that's coming on the scene this weekend, what kind of marketing campaigns are you putting on place, or are you looking at different marketing campaigns? Are you looking to leverage some of the relationships you have with neighbors, something you may not have done before with competitive tourism businesses? We're hearing that people are really looking to their DMOs in the province to see what kind of campaigns they're putting in line, and building on those. I know the province of New Brunswick has offered a Hope Restored campaign, which really focuses on staycations, trying to get DMOs and their counterparts really focusing on bringing the domestic market and working together, as opposed to just relying on those markets coming in from Ontario and Quebec. So some new opportunities there to help out the tourism businesses. Canadians love to travel, we know this, so there may be a significant opportunity to combine or at least convert some of that typically outbound Canadian travel to domestic. But you know, we're going to see that. We're going to see the domestic market mainly coming to our accommodations and attractions in the short term. And that's when people are figuring out sort of where they can go, where they can afford to go, and maybe what may be a bucket list place to go or thing to do. And hopefully in the long term, when people are starting to consider that, they're also starting to consider how and whether they really need to do that bucket list thing and how they're going to do that, what impact it might have. And what we're hearing from our European counterparts is people are thinking more about iconic attractions and experiences. And really, this has been an experience economy. Tourism really is about experiences, as opposed to just the destination. So thinking about, oh, I'd love to see, you know, I'd love to go to France to see the Eiffel Tower. I'd love to experience the food in Italy, not just the destination though. And speaking of those iconic attractions, you know, we know national parks are opening in June. The 30 Canadian zoos and aquariums are looking at reopening plans in Canada. And that includes the Metro Toronto Zoo and then the Ripley's Aquarium. They've already been doing amazing, innovative things with online experiences, digital experiences, virtual experiences. And even though there's not one size fits all sort of Canadian tourism solution, maybe some of these innovations can be helpful to you. So we just wanted to chat a little bit about that. And I'm going to pass it off to Chris, who's going to talk you through some of those innovative things that he's hearing about.
On our city, you know, the most
I can
trusted
add
news
to that,
source
Chris.
out there. But also, yeah, go ahead, Fran.
Well, I was just saying that I was talking to some hotel operators or listening to them, and they're turning cleaning, which used to be kind of a back of house, not front of house kind of operation, but they're turning it into theatrics. So that nighttime cleaning that you used to hide away and so on, they're bringing that front and center so that the guests can see that. And I thought, well, that's very, you know, and give them that comfort and security that thorough cleaning is happening. And they're starting to practice that, and the guests are really appreciative of it.
Yeah, I guess the other thing I just wanted to mention, that's true. This is all this word of swiveling or pivoting. Well, that was cool. It was with regards to campgrounds, and that was just an announcement made by the Premier minutes ago. And I've got some very close colleagues that one of them runs the largest campground in Ontario, Fisherman's Cove, and they're having to completely change the way that they do their washroom facilities, the way they distance their sites. They're resizing some sites. Group camping is changing. So there's a whole bunch of things that are definitely changing. Rebecca?
Yeah, I think on that note, just of what's changing, I mean, what are some of the things that some of the operators on this call have changed? Something major that that you'd like to share with us on that sort of idea of reimagining? I know we have Mr. Doyle on the line. I'd love to hear from you.
Okay, I can jump in on that one. Sort of, I mean, the biggest thing is it's reduced capacity, and that's going to hurt us financially, but it's only thing that we can do, and it makes sense. And we have to really educate the guests that we're not going to be as jam-packed. We've always had time tickets. What in our cities talked about with the global mapping, we're not doing, but we've always had time tickets, so we know a number of people in our building, but we're going to operate at 30% capacity.
Wow.
So that's, but we're and encourage people to buy in advance, so their tickets on their phone, and they scan it as they come in, and so we're not touching them as they go through. We already have that in place. So I mean, we used to have a staff member scan their tickets. Now we'll just have them on their phone, self-scanning. And we're doing also that cleaning front of house. We're going to have people, we have more people cleaning now than like in guest services. So, and that's kind of it. But we just want the ability to open. And that's really kind of the thing we're talking about with every government. Let us open. The guests will decide if they want to come or not. And we just did a quick survey of like 54,000 people on our email list, and 77% said it would come within the first 3 months. So that's a positive.
That's very positive.
Very positive.
Yeah, and we're getting a lot of people doing our virtual tours and our virtual education program. So it's business as usual, except we're not going to have our playground open when we start. Water fountains closed. Some of our our crawl through acrylic tunnel will be closed. Playground's closed. So it's you can still observe the fish. You can walk through it. In controlled environment, but that's about it. We'll open that way through the summer, and then we'll look at bringing back up the programs that we did in the fall. But so that's for us.
Yeah. No, thank you
I've
for
been
that.
talking to some marketing people across various industries with regards to revenue generation, and 3 things that I thought of interesting in terms of getting revenue sooner. Some people are bringing back their programming because it's a lot easier to control in terms of capacity, cleaning. So kids camps, and it's kind of essential for those parents who maybe are going back to work. So science centers and some of the museums are considering, some of it will be virtual, but some of it could be in person, just a smaller capacity. I also saw a big campaign for memberships, driving local memberships. I won't name institutions right now, but there's a big drive on that. And then the third one that I thought was really, really interesting is in marketing, you tend to look for advanced ticketing soon, but this is really soon to be advertising your Christmas parties. But if you're in the, this is mostly in the Science Center world, because obviously those institutions are hands-on institutions. So there's a lot more reticence from the public to go and engage. And the visitor experience isn't going to be that authentic. You can't really do a tour of a hands-on exhibition. So, but they know that they're going to be open in December and September. So they've started to really push those big events that drive a lot of their attendance and revenue, World War II days at various attractions. Science centers doing Halloween and Christmas. So I've seen right now a lot of the programming, people are really pushing those advanced ticket sales. Might seem like far away, but maybe to get a little bit of revenue, it's not a bad idea either.
Rebecca, one thing I just wanted to pick up on from what Amanda has said as well is your short-term hits and how you can talk to markets that don't know you at all and how important that is. And a couple things I've noticed, I was doing a scan of a number of operators primarily around Northern Ontario in the resort sector, and some of them have no messaging at all, which was a bit shocking to me in terms of we're still here, we're open, we're looking forward to seeing you. So to me, one of the quick things is, are you talking to your customers and are you listening to what they want and asking? And the second thing is, and again, this depends on your market, but is there a need you can meet in the short term that's non-traditional for you? And one of the restaurants in our area here, in addition to doing takeout and delivery, they've positioned themselves as a grocery service. So not just the prepared meals, as they have a whole bunch of inventory that you can order. You can order a protein box, you can order a vegetable box, but they're getting rid of their inventory. To Amanda's point, they're getting some revenue. And then the other side is, in the very short term, is there a function that your operation can fulfill for family bubbles? So, and this is going to sound bizarre, but I think there's a huge pent-up demand for end-of-life celebrations. And because a lot of people haven't been able to get together to celebrate. And so some of you may have venues, outdoor settings are lovely and more people can distance. Can you pivot or swivel to your nearby neighbors to fulfill that role?
Interesting concept. Are there people on the line who are really dependent on that event business that want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, I think Dr. Henry in BC made an announcement in the last few days, basically saying there will be no large meetings, there'll be no convention business, etc. this year. So that's caused some fire, alarms amongst that sector, particularly because some of those events that were canceled earlier in the year have been rebooked maybe for that Q4. So I guess it all depends on what the numbers are in terms of, I think it's up to maximum of 50 for gatherings and stuff. So if you can keep those Christmas parties to less than 50, it might work. But if we try to go beyond that, that's really a question for the medical expertise until we get the green light there.
Hi.
Just want to.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm with YMCA Geneva Park, which is a large conference and leadership camp outside of Aurelia, and we're completely shut down. And we normally would have 200 guests on site right now with conferences and meetings, and we'd be prepping into our summer season, which would not only have our conferences, but also have another 50 cottages with families. So upwards of another 500 people. At any given time in the summer, we have 1,000 people with day camps taking place as well. So we're at a standstill right now because we have 5 people on site at the present time, and that's it. So, and that's just staff, a few staff members that are in. So we're really waiting on some more direction from the government to see what things like the family camps, that family bubbles that you're talking about. We have cottages that have full kitchens, and we're hoping that they'll be able to just have their family members in that kitchen, in that cottage, because they'll be able to cook for themselves, use the washrooms and things like that. However, how do we socially distance utilizing our beach areas and our canoeing and kayaking and all that? So we have just a huge amount that's on their plate in front of us looking forward, but waiting to get any type of go-ahead from the government at this point of what we can even offer.
Yeah, I think that's the really scariest part is at the moment when you're thinking about marketing or putting yourself out there, not knowing what the policies are. It makes it extremely difficult. So you kind of have to pivot as soon as you can when that comes.
I would just add that from where I sit, it's we're a group of travel brands, coach tour brands largely, Trafalgar, which I'm sure some of you have heard of. Then of course we've been spending this whole quiet time preparing for exactly that, preparing for how to message to our guests what we're doing with respect to social distancing and hygiene, and messages have started to come out today. We've had a working group working for these past few weeks on how exactly to explain to people what we're going to do on a coach, what we're going to do on a small Toyota Hiace, those sorts of things. But also what's important to note is that we've been really focused on local domestic markets. So, the international stuff doesn't really matter so much just for the purpose of this audience, but aiming to sell Canada to Canadians, which can be a bit of a tricky thing from a tour operator perspective, aiming to sell the US to Americans and then vice versa. So it's an opportunity, and I know it's difficult, and it's extremely difficult, but what we will be looking at from a buyer perspective are those messages of communications. Yes, we are thinking about it, preparing. There's messages that you can put out to market that don't involve putting a fine point on it. And I think that sort of buyers such as yourself, it's precisely what we're looking for at the moment. So I don't think that communication component can be undervalued at all. We certainly aren't delivering sales-driven messages to the market right now. However, I run our sustainability department, and we are hot and heavy. My team can't keep up because, of course, that's focused on the way in which we do business rather than hard sales messages. So, this to say that the regular communication to your market on the fact that you are preparing, even though we don't precisely know what that's going to be. It just can't be undervalued, I don't think. The delay post speaking on Zoom is always very disconcerting.
That was my point too, Shannon, that everybody has to be coming back into this environment, has to be prepared for that, you know, the whole cleanliness protocol, safety protocol, health first, and all of that. So visibility and openness are the key. And the question is, what are we doing behind the scenes to prepare for that? Because we all know that's definitely going to be the next step here. And so I know there are provincial guidelines and so on. The hotel industry are really good at brand guidelines and so on. So eco labs and so on. So anybody that can assist in that regard to get your protocols in place, and then communicate to your employees, because if you don't have training for the employees, while this is happening, you won't be ready to go when the doors open, right?
Yeah, actually, I was just on a call with New Brunswick. I see Aileen there, that we were talking about Shopify. Aileen, I wonder if you wanted to tell us a bit more about that, but just the training that they offer in terms of businesses that are looking to go online.
Actually, this is a really interesting program out of rural Oxford County, and it's a number of partners that have encouraged their members to engage in e-commerce. The SWATC, the Southwest Ontario Tourism Corporation, is providing providing access to Shopify for 5 months. So they were giving them they're encouraging them to make that transition, but then there's training and there's additional support. So they'll need to, the businesses will need to access that they may not have the wherewithal now to access. So there's funding through the Community Futures Development Corporation, and they need to get consultation. They need to be part of the training. They need to do these number of things, so that not only do they have access to Shopify, but they know how to use it, and they'll have the tools to use it within their business.
Yeah, I think both on the resource side, but also on you know, the training side, it's so important to know what's available. And I wonder if there are other innovative resources like that other people have heard about, particularly on the training side.
Yeah, there you go, Denise.
Yeah.
You were muted.
Pipe up a bit here.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, this is a wonderful forum, and great to be with all of you. There are a couple of things that keep going through my mind right now. One is that in terms of, you know, where is travel going now, we've completely lost our data sets. You know, they kind of disappeared sometime in late February, early March, right? So we are really left with trying to figure out consumer sentiment, but it's changing by the minute. And I feel like we're no longer able to make our predictions about travel regeneration because we're really being guided by the health policy and government policy. So we're no longer looking at travel demand and travel motivators. We're really looking at what is happening with government and then calibrating constantly against that. That's just a general comment. But in terms of resources, I did want to share with you and I'm hoping some of you will eventually be collaborating with us on this, but we've been in the process of developing something called the Fire Circle for quite a few months now, since last August. And it's a tourism and hospitality online development hub specifically targeted at new and aspiring and new entrepreneurs. And, you know, this is because we do so much work with Indigenous communities and with rural communities. And it's very much now about trying to disseminate what we know, you know, and even collectively what we know to the individual in rural and northern Canada. And so we're pretty excited. We're in beta testing right now in the content, and it's completely audio and visual content with a written component if they want to engage in that written component. But, and again, because our primary audience is Indigenous, it's calibrated a bit like that. So it's definitely 101, but I'm really hoping to connect with some of you in the coming months about adding more collateral to the platform. It is an aggregator of the resources that we all need right now. Like the other thing that we're able to do right now is really focus on best practices. We're getting a lot of information from all the big guys. What is everybody doing? You know, what is government going to make us do on the cleaning protocols and on the social distancing and all that? So we're just aggregating everything right now and trying to distill it down into best practices.
That's great, Deneen. Thank you. I did want to start, my apologies, but we're at 3 minutes to 2:30. And before I lose you all, I did want to make sure that, that you all check out next week's talk, which will be facilitated by Chris Hughes of BC Hughes with special guest Mark Van Cliff of Connect CX in Traverse City, Michigan. And it's called The Swivel, How We Adapt in Crisis. But just on that note, in terms of data sets, you know, it's something that we'll be posting, but Fran and I are part of a large company, even though we deal with a lot of smaller operators, but we have access to some interesting forecasting on the accommodation side. And at the moment, actually just released this week, they're looking at, you know, a drop in RevPAR of about 50% this year for 2020. So not getting back to 2023 levels until, or 2019 levels until 2023. I mean, these are things that are not necessarily positive, but are things we need to think about in terms of business planning. And so I just wanted to share that with you. It's difficult, but at the same time, I think there's something good in this in terms of how the way we travel hopefully will also be taken into account. And Shannon, I was hoping you might end that discussion a little bit for us, but just on the way we travel and the considerations we're going to make when we travel, especially if it's I mean, in the domestic market, it's a different thing, and that's the markets we're going to be looking at right now. But when we're talking about making those long haul trips.
Sure, I can jump in. One quick thing though, the WTTC has, the World Travel and Tourism Council, I'm sure you all know, have global protocols for what they're calling the new normal that we're following and we've been a part of. And I understand that that's a different body than governmental, but it's I think going to be what the global tour operators are starting to abide by. So I think it's just a useful resource there. It's all free on their website. But with respect to the new normal, I would say from a sort of, you know, somewhere along the distribution network of the global tour operator side of things, those of us that are selling Canada and bringing global markets inbound, notwithstanding the fact that we can't move anywhere just yet, but in that space, the conversation on sustainability is just amped up really big, because I think that when you think about health, it's a part of wellness. It goes straight to sustainability. It goes straight to, you know, the fact that we have had an opportunity to take pause. I guess an opportunity is a rich word, but we have, and take a look at the way in which we operate. And I think it's going to be, it's definitely, from a buyer perspective, it's going to be a critical piece of the puzzle. You know, from my day-to-day, we're moving forward with our 2025 sustainability strategy. Nothing's changed, except we can't quite put a fine point on any targets for a wee while, as we know. But I definitely think that the consumer is going to be more conscious and more aware. And, you know, we've been seeing, you know, a real spike in conversations, and yeah, we get it. We don't need the business case on sustainability. Don't tell me why I should do it anymore. Just tell me how. And I think that that's a really great opportunity right now. And I don't think that's going to go away because this crisis was, is a result largely of another crisis that we have to deal with long term. And so I think that's something really important to consider. Might be because I'm knee deep into it all day and all night, but I do think it's going to be front of mind for the consumer.
No, thank you for that. Well, we are at the 2:30 mark. If there were any questions that you had, thank you, Jim. I encourage you again to go on the website and contact us. If you have our individual emails, contact us that way and we'll connect the group. But again, thank you so much for joining this meeting. I found it really helpful and interesting, and I really appreciate the feedback and the input from those who participated.
Thanks for leading, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Great.
See you next
Thank you.
See you next time.
Hope to see you again.